this is there's several reasons, and I'll make sure all of you know why I wanted you to meet Sheri today. One of them is because what we stand for at Exchange is designing and facilitating experiences that unlock potential. And I know that the connection is obvious to probably most of you, but it's been awesome for me to get to know Sheri because our teachings in a retreat setting make a lot of sense. So doesn't it make sense for all of us to also hear from somebody who's a leader in the field of leading and putting on profitable retreats? So Harry, I'm glad if you're excited, and maybe this sparks some ideas for you and many others. Okay, before I bring up Sheri, I have one question. I'm going to ask you all to put it in the chat because we're going to do a little real-time research. And team, any of you could help me and do a real-time AI analysis in the background. You can debate amongst each other who's got the capacity to do that right now. I want you all to answer two questions if you're willing, not required. If you're willing, question one is in a sentence or less. What is your experience with retreats? And I'm talking about hosting. And you could say a lot, a little, nothing, I'd like to. Question two is going to be on a scale of 1 to 5. How did you do financially? Now, this is sensitive information. You may not even want to share this. So, and I'll put the questions in the chat. There you go. A 5 is you made a bundle of money. 4 is you made something. 3 is you broke even. 2 is you lost money. And 1 is you lost a lot of money. So, okay, this is fine. Your answers are perfectly fine. The AI will sort through all of this. So some of you have a lot. David, you've got a lot of experience and you've made big bucks. Good for you. Greg, you've hosted several retreats, not the best financial return. I love the honesty, by the way. Sheri's going to have all this data real time and be able to like respond to some of this. So I'd like to, and I want to make money. Jamie, good. Us too. That's why we're here. Cynthia, you have experience and a 4 out of 5. Let's get it to a 5 today. Okay, perfect. Okay, now it is time. Team, if you want to bring Sheri up onto the stage. Sheri, I just want to say this. You are a true visionary. You're the founder at Wanderlust Entrepreneur. And you've got a community of over 65,000 students. And, you know, I could sit here and tell a story about you, which I'm not. I'm a big believer that oftentimes there are certain numbers that tell the story, which, by the way, that has multiple meanings, because today I'm going to ask you to share with us about really making money in retreats, not just what makes a great retreat, but how do we make sure that we can do it sustainably. But back to the fact that you've got 65,000+ students. You are the owner of a travel agency that specializes in crafting extraordinary transformational group journeys. And the other thing I want everyone to know is, you know, you teach just like we do at Exchange, but in your domain around, you know, for people that want to go really far, you talk all about every dimension of retreats. Sheri, you do have coming up in a few weeks, a 3-day event. And I just want all of you to know, I'm not going to shy back from encouraging you to go to Sheri's event because you can get a seat, Sheri, am I correct, for as little as $1. Is that correct?
Yes, it's a pay what you want event.
Okay, that's super cool. How many of you have an appreciation for, at this time in the world, like someone putting on a 3-day event and saying, pay what you want? Like if you appreciate that, you can unmute and say, thanks, Sheri. So Sheri, I'll ask you before we're all done to make sure everyone knows where they can find that. There is a link in your all's workbook, but I just want to start kind of giving you some questions if you're down. Does that sound good?
Absolutely. Let's get to it. This is my favorite subject to talk about. Obviously, everyone here is jazzed to be, you know, digging into how to put on a profitable and deeply transformational retreat. So yeah, this is great.
So first thing is you heard Melissa, Kim, and Anne.
Correct.
And Harry share their report out. I'd love is if there any reaction you have to anything that you heard there. Like as you heard Melissa talking about everything they identified, Kim talking about the connection to nature and allowing things to emerge. Like, what's your reaction to anything you heard?
I think they're all typical comments when it comes to transformational retreats. So it's not surprising, being that I've been doing this for a long time. I've been hearing, the same kind of thing. And I do think that what Melissa said, and Kim and Anne and Harry, all appropriate comments, all different aspects of transformational retreats. So definitely expected and totally on board with.
You your journey with retreats started with a retreat or working with Don Miguel Ruiz, and I know his writings have been really influential. They have been for me, and they may have been for a lot of folks here. His teachings. Tell us about that experience and how that got you started in all this.
Okay. So I had been unhappy in my life. I used to be a podiatrist. I ran a surgical residency program and I practiced for 18 years. And I needed a change in my life. And I had been divorced twice. I just couldn't figure out why I wasn't happy in my life. So I signed up for a retreat. Never had gone on one before. And that retreat with Don Miguel Ruiz literally changed my life. Not so much that everything was fixed in that one retreat, but I had the realization of what was causing the issues in my life and why I was unhappy. And the reason I was unhappy wasn't because of anything outside of me, it was actually me. So it was the first time I took deep responsibility for how I was creating my life and why it turned out the way it was. And so that one retreat had me signing up for every single thing that Don Miguel Ruiz ever did or sold. And then after studying with him for like a year, his business manager needed to leave and he asked me to run his business. So for 2 years, I helped design and run all of his retreats and workshops and programs and speaking gigs and all of that. So it gave me a fantastic background in what really is, how can I say, like, just so experiential, because
Mm,
there's a difference for me. A lot of people do retreats as workshops in a pretty place, and that is very different to me than a deeply experiential retreat. So that's something that was very meaningful for me. And I started my travel agency in 2003 to do my own retreats. And then I started managing retreats for others because they were having trouble selling them out and so on. And then in 2014, I started Wanderlust Entrepreneur and started educating people because I realized, like we just saw in the chat, most retreat leaders are not making any money. So for any of the you guys who posted that you didn't make a lot of money on your retreat, please don't, it's not a bad thing. It happens to like most of our heart-based entrepreneurs. So
mm,
it's just an education issue more than anything else, not because you're a bad person. So
mm.
please don't take that personally. It's not.
So, Sherry, thanks for kind of connecting these dots for us. And I do want to come back to the economics, right? And, putting on any kind of event is like, you got to know what you're doing to be able to make money. So we're going to come back to that because I really want to learn from you on that. If you don't mind, just one follow-on question. Is there anything that you remember the most about that first ever retreat with Don Miguel Ruiz? Is there anything that, like, when you think about it now, that stands out as something that was just really key to that first experience doing what it did for you?
I would have to say the recognition about how closed my heart was at the time.
Mm,
It was having a dose of honesty about where I was in my life.
mm,
Because it's very easy to play the victim role, even if we don't see ourselves as victims. But
mm,
I just had the attitude that the things wrong in my life were because of my ex-husbands and my parents and medicine and all of this. And then I realized that wasn't truth. So it was the deep honesty. The space made it safe for me to come to that deep honesty. And
mm,
that's the magic. Part of the
Mm,
magic of retreats, to be able to feel like you're held enough in a space that it's okay to go in there and open up, no matter what the consequences of that might be, which could be you crying your eyes out or falling apart in front of like a bunch of other strangers or whatever else.
mm. Well, so that's then what I want to ask about is how can we create those spaces? And if you don't mind, I want to reflect back something you said. I don't know how many of you picked up on this phrase that Sheri said, which was some people run retreats, but what they're really doing is doing a workshop in a pretty place.
Mm.
Whereas what you're a stand for is a deeply transformative experience. And anyone who's a part of our world at Exchange, that's what we're all about. And we totally get what you mean. But what have you learned about how to do that? What are, from your experience, the keys to creating that kind of experience where people really feel that safe to have that transformation?
Well, there's many layers to this, but in a very basic way, I would say that it's very critical to separate a workshop from a retreat, because for me a retreat means to go within. There needs to be process time in the design of a retreat. And also, this is very key, and this is something perhaps unique to the way that I teach retreats. You must align your location with what you are teaching.
Mm,
So I want to give a quick example of that. If you were doing a knitting retreat, let's say, you could do that anywhere, right? And it would be pretty. I mean, you could certainly do it on a beach, you could do it on a cruise, you could do it on, a boat or whatever. But what if you took your group to New Zealand during sheep shearing time and you actually went through the process of seeing wool become a skein? And have a deeper appreciation for that 7,000-year-old process. So that's what happens when the location starts teaching. And this has something to do with the pricing later, and I'll remind me, John, to mention that.
I will.
But another example is, let's say you teach people how to speak publicly. You can certainly do it in the hotel by the Atlanta airport where everyone flies into, or you could take your group to Europe and get some time at one of the amphitheaters and actually have the experience of speaking in an ancient amphitheater and the energy of the ancient people who spoke on that very stage. So in this case, your activities become alive and experiential. So, or let's say you teach essential oils. You could go, let's say, to, I don't know, Washington State when they're harvesting the peppermint and seeing the process of distillation where they're taking huge amounts of raw plant material and turning it into a teeny bottle of oil, and understanding why that little bottle of oil is expensive and how much plant it started out as. So these kinds of things make a difference, because what's happening is, instead of just having an auditory or a visual experience, you are now having, a kinesthetic experience and learning, which takes things a lot deeper.
Mm.
Does that make sense, John?
Oh, it doesn't just make sense.
Mhm.
It's so it's on one hand, it's like, oh, it's almost obvious. That's the brilliant way to do this, but it's not obvious.
It's
And
not obvious.
what it's not. And when you hear it, how many of you are like, shit, I want to knit. I want to go to New Zealand, right?
Yeah.
I love Hal's comment. Let's all just admit that we now all love Sheri. um, I want to share, kidding aside, like why, for me, what I just heard from you is so key is because we've now learned over the last 5 years how much we can do by clicking on a Zoom link. And so anybody with two brain cells bouncing around is going to realize I don't need to go sit in the Atlanta airport hotel for something that I could pretty much get that learning online. Whether it's true or not, a lot of people have learned to expect that. So what you're talking about it really is an honoring of the fact that there's a lot we now know we can do online. And you're pointing out, here's how to think about what to do if you're actually asking people to get on a plane. And I just think that's so smart.
Exactly. Every location has a mythology. It's digging into the mythology a little deeper to make those connections and to have those understandings.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that. Those of you in the exchange community who are coming to our Appreciative Inquiry Summit training in June, it is not just on the campus, it's in the room that is like literally where Appreciative Inquiry was born. So I'm just feeling really great that we did that. Sheri, let's keep going here. So aligning venue with theme. Thank you. That is awesome. What else? So let's say we've got the right venue, it's aligned with the theme. What comes up next for you around creating a meaningful experience?
So I'm a believer of not hammering people with information on a retreat. I feel like the experiences can be teaching the material for you. So, like, I think a gathering in the morning, maybe for 2 hours, okay, but then have activities in the afternoon, those kinesthetic activities that continue the teaching. And so then you can meet in the evening again for a sharing circle and have people come up to the front of the room and share or in the circle, however, you do your thing. But to be able to have that allowed process time, some people are internal processors, but a lot of people are external processors, and it really helps to hear other people speaking and sharing. And so as a very general layout, that's kind of what I would recommend. So going back to Don Miguel Ruiz, he was very experiential. Like he didn't like talking a lot, but he'd give a prompt outside. Like for example, let's say we were at Teotihuacan, Mexico, with the Pyramid of the Moon and the Sun, and we were walking down the Avenue of the Dead. He might stop us and say, give us an exercise to do on the land. So, like, for example, one of his things was take a rock and pretend it is a your funeral. What would everybody be saying about you right now as you're burying yourself
Hmm.
here in this plaza? And do you like what you hear? And what would you do to change that?
Hmm.
So
Hmm.
I'm making it very compressed. I mean, there was more to it than that, but it's that kind of thing. Can you use the land and the environment and where you are to have a process out on the land,
Hmm.
which, when you go back to like what Kim was saying in connecting to the wild, there's things that nature have to teach us, and that being on the land makes realizations come up that maybe you wouldn't have if you were in the classroom, because the classroom of the earth is quite wise.
Sheri, I'm smiling because I have my screens on gallery. There's a lot of our community at Exchange who are here who I know pretty well who are deeply resonating with what you're sharing and really appreciating
Mm-hmm.
that reminder how much we can learn from the land. Yeah, and I also really appreciate this idea of, hey, let's stop and double check how we're going to spend time. And are we really going to passively just give people info when, for 30 years we expect we can get content where we want, when we want, on the device at the speed we want? So it's like,
Mm-hmm.
we're in person, let's do something. I love that. Thank you. So aligning location, the make it experiential. What's a third thing that comes up for you around the key to creating that safe or transformational retreat?
Well, I think that in the formulation of your retreat, you can't teach everything. You need to make it a hyper focused experience.
Mm,
That's in my opinion. The more hyper focused it is, the more you can see what the promise of the retreat is. So by the end of the retreat, this, and this is what you're going to be walking away with. When things are too general, I find that to be, it doesn't sell very well because people don't understand the value. They don't understand what they are going to be walking away with. So we want to make sure we're on the right thing with that and not have it like, for example, I taught the four agreements for 13 years. My retreats were not four agreements retreats. They might be, for example, using the four agreements, of course, but the retreat might be hyper focused on forgiveness. And so, through different ceremonies and different activities, we would come to a place where we were ready to let something go that has been weighing on our hearts for a while. And we're going to do it for agreement style, but it's a hyper focused, specific thing. Or, for example, a relationship. So I might make it specific, like your relationship to yourself, family, friends, and then the greater world,
Mm.
or your higher self, or whatever you know, believe in.
Mm. I, Sherry, I really appreciate this idea that you just shared around by being hyper focused. Did I hear you correctly in saying that it actually makes it even more likely or possible that we can actually deliver on the promise?
Yes,
Yeah.
exactly. And, I always recommend that there's a follow up offer afterwards
Yeah.
from the retreat so you can support people in their transformation and not let them go back into their previous situation and have all of it fall apart. So it's like really being clear on what piece you're delivering during that time, and then how you're going to support them afterwards, because I don't believe that retreats are one-off items. And
Mm.
that is something that a lot of people do. So they'll run a retreat, and that's that's the end of it. And you're leaving people hanging. I call it abandonment, but however you want to call it, I just feel like if Don Miguel Ruiz left me alone after that first retreat, nothing would change in my life. I'd have that realization, but who's going to support me when I'm back in the same systems that I came from?
Mm. You know what's fascinating about what you're sharing, Sherry, is there a few things. One is for all of us who have been a part of the exchange world, I'm sure a lot of you are picking up on something here, and that is by being hyper focused and making it easier to articulate the promise. So we're talking about the design of the retreat, which leads to the marketing of the retreat. How many of you realize, oh, it's actually easier to deliver on a promise that's more focused than five promises? And it'll actually be easier to market it and easier to have happier customers, as opposed to this retreat's going to do all these things, and how do I explain that, and then how do I actually deliver on that? So there's an interesting like
Exactly.
multi-dimensional win that I feel in what you're teaching. And the other thing I just want to appreciate is this last point, and everything you said to me is actually about creating a better experience for them, and it's a better business for us, which is where you started to go with this. Like this, and I love that you use the word abandonment because none of us
Yes.
want to abandon people. But what a great way to get our attention! Like, yeah, as a business, not having the next thing is a disservice.
Exactly. And one thing I want to give everyone a piece of data right now, because as a travel business, I get all the data in the travel industry. So I get all those magazines and information. So the tailor-made travel market, and a retreat to me is a tailor-made travel experience, right? Is expected to see a compound annual growth rate of 7.8% from 2023 to 2029, growing to a $500 billion market size. Yes. So this is not like, we're not just throwing stuff around here. And if you notice, a lot of hotels now are are creating their own retreats. Why? Because they do market research in a really huge way, And they are jumping on the retreat market that we've always been in. So, where are you guys in all of this? A 500 billion market size by 2029. So it's growing at 7.8% a year. People need these kinds of experiences. They want to be with people that think like them. So they feel safe with all the um, divisiveness out there. People want to be in what they feel are safe spaces. And so that's what they're looking for from you
Mm,
to
yeah.
make that tailor-made market, to create a retreat that's hyper focused so that there's a specific thing they know they're going to walk away with. And that's important right now.
Well, I also think, and my team told me my mic is too loud, so I'm stepping back a little bit.
Okay.
Um, I think you're presenting really important data around the size and the growth of the industry, which that's really good for all of us to have that awareness.
Mm-hmm.
I also think I have a feeling that for a lot of us here right now, I know this is how I feel when I think about the state of the world that we're in, the degree to which a changing world that's surpassing our ability to adapt to that change and what that's doing to the collective nervous system.
Yeah,
How many of you see retreats are a very natural, you want to talk about pausing and self-regulating, a retreat is a deep pause.
exactly.
So it's worth seeing that this isn't just some luxury. This is actually becoming more and more of a need for people.
Oh, it's not a luxury. A retreat is not a luxury, it's a necessity.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Sheri, you've brought up multiple times how important it is that we get the pricing right and the business
Yes.
model right. Let's go to that because I think you have so much to share, and you would know where the best starting point is. When we had people put in the chat earlier, so the team sent me something in the background, and I can hardly read it. The majority here are either on the newer side or don't have as much experience. A few people have made some money,
Mm-hmm.
um, but there have been quite a few that said profiting was a challenge. So that's just a summary. So, what's a good starting conversation based on the sense you have about who's here?
It's typical. Like I said earlier, this is typical. And this is why I'm so passionate about doing what I do. So, one of the things that happens is that we have undercharging. And a lot of times, people, when they're creating their retreat and they go to price the retreat, they're not really thinking about how this all comes together. Retreats tend to be small. If you're missing one person on that retreat, it's going to severely change your pricing, what you end up netting. So you need to make sure you have every single item put in your list of costs. And that includes credit card fees, um, your helpers, room, their food, your room, your food, your transport, like the everything. And you need to make sure that's part of the pricing. Your net profit is not what's left over at the end, it is a line item in your costs. That way, everything is in there. You know exactly what you're going to profit. And most people base the cost of their retreats on how many people they wish to be there rather than on the a smaller number that's more reasonable that they could hit.
Mm,
So that way, if they have extra people, that's fine. But if they don't go into the negative. And that's really key. And they need to have that post retreat program ready because that adds additional income. So, undercharging and undervaluing themselves, forgetting key expenses, not making an offer at the end, I think it's really important to understand, and this is what I mentioned to you earlier, Jon. is that a retreat takes over 100 hours to conceptualize, to create a sales page for, to deliver it itself, and then clean it up afterwards. And if you only make $1,000 or so, you're making $10 an hour, right?
Yep.
$1,000, 100 hours,
Yep.
you're making $10 an hour. You can't survive on that. It's not sustainable. And then I would have to say that your retreat's a hobby, not a proper business.
Mm.
So we need to just be honest and call it what it is.
Mm.
And the thing we need to understand, like a lot of people, they get nervous. They feel like if my retreat is a higher price and I actually make money, people won't come. But this is not true because people pay for value and they pay for solutions. So you need to really embody that. If you have a great retreat concept, they're going to walk away with something great, then you need to charge properly and you need to get the hell out of people's wallets because that's not where you belong. You don't belong in someone else's wallet. You
What do
don't
you
know
mean by
what
that?
resource you don't know what resources people have. People
Ah,
could
yeah. Yeah.
go in their closet and sell stuff on Facebook Marketplace or do a GoFundMe thing for the retreat. You cannot be wondering what someone else is going to pay or not pay because the retreat is hard costs plus your net. Nothing is changeable there. It is what it is. I mean, you could do camping if you want to do the prices lower versus five-star luxury hotel, but the cost is the cost.
Mm.
Okay.
I always thought the easiest and most profitable retreat to put on would be an online silent retreat. But you're talking about something very different, not to diminish a silent retreat. But I used to have fun thinking about, the different configurations. Well, so let me ask a question on behalf of everybody. I'm just trying to imagine and actually I'm asking this on behalf of myself. Sheri, what do people charge for retreats? Like you see so many people putting on. How many of you have curiosity? Like what are the going rates that different? Like it gives some examples, whether it's the knitting or the speaking or the oils or anything. What are you seeing out there that's working?
Okay, what I'm seeing is that's the absolute worst question any of us should be asking because a retreat to Bali that's camping out might be
Mm,
$2,000 and the
mm,
retreat leader still might be making $1,000 net per person. Or you could have a $6,000 Bali retreat where they're still only making $1,000 per person because the rest is expenses.
mm,
This is why we cannot ask that question. It is
mm,
not, it you can't answer it. It's based on hard costs. So your retreat is whatever price the total expenses plus what you want to make comes to. Now, I'm going to give you guys an example of something. So, one of my students, um, can I share
you can
my
share anything you want.
something?
Yeah. Oh,
Yeah,
like share the screen? Yeah, yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
I just want to show you guys something. Okay, so can you guys
Patricia. Yep.
yes, so she's one of my students and her ideal client, they're nerds, sci-fi people.
Adventures for Nerds. This is brilliant.
Yes, now she also is an actress and she was in Babylon 5. So people do love her and she loves her nerds. And most of her retreats were in the $4,000 to $6,000 range. And this December 2022, she decided she wanted to do a high end, amazing retreat to Africa. And so this retreat price came to $23,000.
Mm,
Now, I want you to keep in mind that when her retreats were between like $4,000 and $6,000, it took her 8 months approximately to a year to sell out her retreats. All right, I'm going to stop the share now that we all saw that. How many days do you think it took her to sell out a $23,000 retreat? Just curious what you guys listening might think. Let's see what people put in the chat. How long do you think it took? $23,000, y'all. Let's see. What do we have? 10 days. Stephanie says 5. Steve says 10. Jamie says 30 days. Tommy says 90. Greg says 1 year. Okay, sellout means filled. Filled. Okay. So Brent says 1. Monica says same day. All right, I'll let you guys know. It took exactly 3 days to sell out that $23,000 event. Why? Because it was hyper focused, spoke exactly to her ideal client. The value of the retreat was expressed clearly on the retreat sales page. And it was a location a lot of people wanted to go to. It was on their bucket list, and they wanted to go with her because she sells her trips to the people who know, like, and trust her, not strangers who do not know who she is. So that makes a big difference.
So, Sheri, it's super helpful, and I really respect that you are putting right in front of us, whether you'd call it a challenge or just holding up a mirror for us, that if we're gonna do this, we've got to have an eyeball on the financial model. And that's so important. How many of you have been guilty of getting into something and being too late to the game or not precise enough and paying close attention to the dollars and cents? Yeah, I can relate to that. So I really appreciate that. Is there anything that we've not brought up that you think somebody here should be thinking about or aware of when it comes to either how they manage cost, how they set pricing, or look at it this way? I think we saw earlier that a lot of folks here don't have experience putting on retreat. So if it's like their first one, what's the low hanging mistakes when it comes to how we design it, price it, sell it, or the biggest opportunity for folks that are getting into this for the first time?
Well, like we said before, of course, where you're doing your retreat. We said the location is important, how you structure the retreat, how you price the retreat, how you market the retreat, and then how you monetize the retreat. So that's what I would say. We've got 4 steps, right? We have the design, the pricing, the promotion, and the monetizing. And if we have all that, that is fantastic. And there's also legalities that we have to be aware of around retreats also, because there are seller of travel laws that we need to know about. Our retreats should be insured, and we should have very serious legal forms, because if you are taking people away somewhere, you are responsible for them,
Mm.
physically, mentally, spiritually. That's how I see it.
Mm. So thank you for that. There's a question that came in the chat, and
Sure.
yeah, I'm curious your thoughts on. Emma asked the question. She said, I'd love to be addressing the tricky issue of, oh, now the chat moved, of flights, travel, climate breakdown when we're talking about retreats, especially with travel. Anything that brings up for you?
What is the tricky issue of flights, travel, and climate breakdown? I'd have to ask that back to you. I'm not sure what
Yeah, Emma,
exactly
if you
you
want to put
said.
that in the chat, that would be
Yeah,
fine. We could come back to that. Steve
because
asks
I
a
don't.
Steve asks
Okay,
a question, a marketing question. To
sure.
sell a retreat, you have to have an audience that's receiving the offer. I think this is one a lot of people would appreciate. Can you
Hmm.
say anything more about building an audience, especially if you're starting from scratch?
Okay, so an example of this is when I started Wanderlust Entrepreneur in 2014, I had no list at all. I had a 4 agreements list because I had been teaching that before. And I needed to build a list because I had actually put money down on a venue in Morocco for exactly 1 year later. I did it to force myself to grow my list and fill my retreat. So what I did, and there's many ways of growing lists. It depends on you, what you're sharing, and what, you know, your skill sets are. But for me, I started out doing webinars. So I would do webinars on a regular basis, and people would come on my list. I would, I also created a program in Wanderlust Entrepreneur. That's our signature program, which is the Retreat Blueprint program. And so on that webinar, I would share about the program. Some people would buy the program, so that paid for Facebook ads that I ran to my webinar. I would sell that particular program. And then other people would also sign up for my retreat. And I just kept rinsing and repeating and doing the same thing. I'm not a big fan of hummingbird marketing where you hop from one flower to the next. You know what I mean? A lot of us do hummingbird marketing. But I just found something that worked for me, for my personality. I don't mind teaching like this online, so it worked well. But people do summits, people speak from the stage, people do challenges, people do all different things to build their audience. But the best people for your retreat are the ones who know, like, and trust you. Because as you can imagine, you are asking a total stranger to travel with you when they don't know your point of view, how you teach, where you're coming from, what your values are. I would not want to be trapped, in an event with somebody that I knew nothing about and that was against what I believe.
Mm. Sheri, thanks for what you're sharing. And I'd love your reaction to a question that came in, and then I'm going to share my kind of uninformed response because I've had a curiosity about this. So I've been invited to attend some different types of retreats over the last probably year or so. And one of the things I've noticed, and I'm just curious from you, A, your opinion on this, and B, is this a trend in how to sell or market these? I've noticed that when I've been invited, I've had like three or four of these. There's no website. It's literally information in a Google document. And so I'm looking at that and I go, okay. And I'm actually thinking I don't need a website from them because I'm only going to go because of my personal relationship anyways. The Google document's only just telling me whatever I'm at the logistics. I'm not really going to go because my point here is that would have worked with me because I'm not going to go because of what's on a website. I'm really going because it's going to be a relationship, a trust, a one-to-one conversation.
Mm-hmm.
And a corollary to this is I was just invited like yesterday in the last week. There's somebody who we can't say their name who wants to partner with Exchange for us to help lead these couples retreats.
Nice.
And we're going to put one on in Aspen at some point in the future. We got the venue and we're like, okay, how do we want to fill it up? And our automatic response was, well, for the first one, we're gonna make this is gonna be old fashioned. So I'd love your reaction to this approach, and please beat me up if this is not a good idea. But our thought was, if we're gonna have people spending quite a bit, it's gonna be one-to-one conversations, and we're gonna make a list, and we're gonna talk to these people. And I know that sounds very non-technical.
No, it isn't. It isn't.
Yeah,
And we always tell people when they're first starting out that that's a really great way. I still do that, like for my retreat coming up to Croatia, I will send a lot of private messages to people because it's nice to be invited. However, I still have a good sales page. And the
yeah,
reason is I find that yes, if I'm going on a retreat with somebody that I know, like, and trust and want to learn from, or whatever's happening on that retreat, at the same time, I'm a foodie. If the food's not going to be good, I may not want to go. And if
mm-hmm,
the room is not something that I feel comfortable in, I'm not going to go. So these are very important aspects, I
mm-hmm,
feel, and they should be stated on the sales page.
mm-hmm.
So if you're doing a retreat, yeah, you could have like a simple Google Doc, but still, I believe you need to have all of the information that people need to be able to make a choice. You also need to have the information that addresses objections that they might have.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Yeah.
John, I also saw that Emma answered back. Is it okay if I answer
Oh,
her?
yeah, go for it, please. Thanks, Emma. Yeah,
Okay,
please.
thank you for clarifying that, Emma, because this really helps. So, hopefully you come to our 3-day event coming up, but the first session is talking in this event about what's hot and what's not in travel. And so slow travel is one of the things that has become really popular in travel in general, meaning not using planes, but maybe riding a horse or a llama or hiking, different things like that. And I also recommend that people do carbon emissions, do carbon credits if you have to fly. It's a very nice way, at least, to invest in some companies that are doing some really great things in the environment. So even if you do have to travel, at least you're putting back into the environment something great, either planting trees or whatever those carbon credits are going to. So this is something that a lot of people in our community do. They include the cost of carbon credits in the price of the retreat, and then they give back in that way. And a lot of them, too, give back to whatever area they are visiting. So, like, as an example, when I did my retreat in Morocco, there was a women's organization there that helps young women who are Muslim stay in school so that they become leaders in the government later and really participate. And so they are not stuck home because they don't have sanitary pads or things that would prevent them from being in school. So I always try to give back on retreats. So you can add that in your pricing, giving back, carbon credits. And if you choose, excuse me, I have a little frog in my throat here. You can do slow travel for your retreat.
Hmm.
So do a train or do whatever it is that has the lowest impact on the environment.
We've run summits for companies. Now, these are not retreats, but it's 300 people in a room for 3 days where the company themselves, they made the decision, they made the investment, and they run the whole thing zero waste
That's
because
great.
that's what they stand for. Like anyone can research that, make that decision, and execute on it. It's not that hard to learn how to do that really fast these days. So.
I think it's great. Emma's question was wonderful.
Emma, thank you for that. Sheri, let me ask you this because we've got a few more minutes here and I want to be respectful of everybody's time. Is there anything that we've not explored that you really think would be important or meaningful for folks here to understand about designing, pricing, promoting, monetizing a retreat that I've not asked about or hasn't come up before we transition?
Well, I do want to let people know that when you do a retreat and you make it all inclusive, meaning you have your food, your room, maybe transportation to and from the venue or to activities, and all of that is priced together, you now have created a travel experience. Henceforth, you have to follow seller of travel law, which is why you see a lot of live events where a person will get a like a room package for their people, but they're not paying for it. They're just negotiating a special price for that bunch of rooms, and you're only paying for the event itself. They're unbundling, and that is why there's no issues around doing a live event versus doing a retreat. Because, for example, in Canada, in Quebec and Ontario, you cannot run a retreat unless you run it through a travel company. You cannot take the money. You will be shut down and they will fine you. Canada is very strict. And we have that in 4 states in the United States. So we have that in Florida, which is why I became my corporation's in Florida. That's why I became a travel agency in 2003 when I was teaching the 4 agreements. I did it for myself so I could run my retreats legally. Also, California, Washington State, and Hawaii are the 4 states that have seller of travel law that you must abide by. Whether
Mm.
you get caught probably is very small versus Canada, but not knowing the law does not make it so that you know, you still have to know the law. So
Mm.
that's important.
Sheri, thank you for this. Thanks for giving us a glimpse into your world. And I know that's what today was, is a glimpse. And I think for some of us, it may be inspiring to keep thinking about this topic. I mentioned this at the start of our time together, and I want to make sure everybody knows you have a 3-day online event coming up, and it's called Rock Your Profitable Sold Out Retreat. And this event, folks can pay what they want, from $1 to some option where they can pay more. Could you explain that to anyone here who wants to go check that out?
Of
I would
course.
love if you would tell them about that event.
Yes. So we have our event. This is our 5th year. And what we do is we go everywhere between $1 and 297. If you want to keep the material, you pay the 297. And if you want, other than that, as long as you pay $1, you're in there. So I wanted to share a glimpse of what this event is about. Is it okay, Jon, if I share my screen again?
Yeah, please do.
Okay. So just to run you guys through this so you have a little better understanding of what we're doing. The 3 days are May 6th, 7th, and 8th. We have 4 sessions on the main days. And so, for example, on day 1, we're doing retreat trends, how to stay ahead in a competitive market, how to attract the right peeps and repel the wrong ones, positioning your retreat for maximum bookings. We have retreat legalities, what you need to know to stay protected. We have a session on profitable pricing, Retreat Riches, Smart Strategies for Year-Round Income and Impact. This is about monetizing your retreat. This session's on picking a venue. This is about creating high converting sales page for your retreat and the magic of reverse engineering to fill your retreats. These 4th sessions are Q&A sessions, which are really fun because we have retreat leaders come on and they talk about what they did terribly wrong and terribly right. We could say it's a lot, you learn a lot. And then on both the 10th and the 12th, I give a presentation. It's a master class that sums up everything that I taught over the 3 days, which is really fun. And then a final session on the 13th. This is a bonus session on top strategies for a fully booked retreat. We have Q&A on each of the days. So we also have all of the replays on our program platform, which is Experientify. So you get points as you go through the event. And I'm not going to tell you what happens with the points. You'll find out if you join, but it is a lot of fun. And we have some material that is really fun before the event really starts to keep you busy and excited about what we're going to be doing. So I highly recommend, if you're a newbie, you are really going to understand what needs to be in place to create a really beautiful, experiential, transformational retreat. If you've done retreats before, this is going to fix your marketing, fix your sales page, fix all of that stuff so that you could make what you should be making for the transformation that you share. So that is going to be a big help. And the thing is, you're going to meet so many people because we normally have around 5,000 people coming. We have retreat leaders, venues, um, travel professionals, retreat planners. So you might find someone to do a retreat with, someone you love. People come in the group, the Facebook group for the event, and they introduce themselves, and the things that people are doing or want to do are amazing. The people are remarkable. And you just see the excitement in the group for being able to help all the people we have in our heart to help. So I really hope that you can come. If you can't make it those days, you could always just buy the event and have it afterwards. So, but we have replays from the 6th to the 16th. So, really, you have plenty of time to catch up in that time if you want to, also.
Sheri, I'm super pumped for you, and I'm inspired, and I hope some of you are inspired just to be in the presence of Sheri, seeing what she has built and how many people she's helped. And I also just want to make sure everybody hears this loud and clear. If you all have been a part of our exchange world for some time, about 90% of you have been a part of our community for a long time. If I were to ask you how many other people's programs or teachings are we actively encouraging, you'd have to work really hard to count on one hand going back 10 years. I just want to make it really clear. Sheri's work is so harmonious with ours at Exchange. How many of you who are a part of our world see how obvious that is? It's like, it's really, really cool. And it's really complementary. And it's beautiful when we get to meet somebody whose work is so complementary with what we stand for at Exchange. So I'd encourage any of you, go check this out. The link, team, can you redrop? Thanks, Janet. There's a link in the Zoom chat box. Go check it out. To be able to go look at and learn from everything Sheri's doing for $1 is, that's super generous. I mean, if I were a lot of you, I would be looking into this for so many different reasons, not just to learn from Sheri. I know our team will be attending, but also to just be watching how Sheri's running her business. Sheri, you don't mind if we're all watching how you're running your business, do you?
No, actually, as I'm running the event, I share with people what I'm actually doing. So, for example, with the reverse engineering session on the third day, I explain how I'm reverse engineering with the event itself. Because
Awesome.
even to sell a retreat, you could even do like a 1 day event, like a virtual kind of retreat to
Yeah.
sell your in-person retreat, because you give people a taste of what they might experience. For example, during COVID, Jon, um, one of the women who used to work with me, we did a virtual retreat. It was winter in Colorado where she lived. And she took her laptop outside. She created a fire, and we all did a fire ceremony with her around the fire. And people had their own little burning bowls, and she had the actual fire when she was leading this, uber
That's awesome.
woo woo event out there. And we were with her with our own fire bowls, and we were going to do it. So there's lots of ways that you can get people on your list or sell your retreat that are creative and fun. That was just one of them.
That's so cool. Well, our company, we were born over 10 years ago, but we were reborn in 2020 when we had to figure out if we could do this online. And there's a few of you nodding your heads, you know the story. We had an in-person event we were hosting. It was a group of women entrepreneurs in Austin, Texas, the second weekend of March. And the pandemic came along, and it was a retreat. And we're like, we're going to try the retreat on Zoom. And
Mm-hmm.
the rest was history for us. So
Yeah.
we know that can work. It's been a big part of what we've learned. Okay, here's what we're going to do. First of all, if you've all enjoyed just getting to meet Sheri today and connect with Sheri, do you want to unmute and just say whatever you want to Sheri? Go for it, everybody. Okay, last question. What is the greatest gift you want to take away from our time with Sheri today? Was there a seed of an idea? Was there an inspiration? Was there something Sheri shared that you want to remember to remember? And here's what I'm going to do. If any of you want to put the answer in the chat box, you can. Sheri will send all that to you later on just so you can see it. And if there are maybe two, three of you who want to raise your digital hand and courageously speak directly to Sheri, simply sharing your greatest gift you're going to take from today and appreciation. We'll start with Tucker and then we'll go from there.
So many poor examples. Yeah, it was really good.
Tucker, thank you much. Thank you much.
Yeah, thanks, Sheri.
Jorge, please.
I really appreciate it.
Jorge, thanks. And it's good to see you, by the way. Thank you. Debbie, and then Martha, we'll wrap with you. Debbie, please.
Great.
Debbie, awesome. Glad you made it. Glad you made it. Thanks, Debbie. Martha, you'll be the last one for now.
Thank you so much, Martha. I really appreciate it.
Well, Martha, thank you. Glad you were here. Sheri, thanks a ton. Thanks a ton for coming to hang out with the Exchange community. And I know for a lot of our community, they figured out really quickly why I really appreciate where you're coming from. You're not the only person that teaches about retreats, but in a lot of ways, you're leading in that space. And what you are teaching from our perspective is like, this is so meaningful. It's so needed. And so you're the one person we wanted our community to meet who's teaching in this space, because you're so aligned with what we stand for. From even, how many of you notice Sheri's business model, what we call strategic generosity? It's like, hey, give you a chance to go get everything you want, right? That's awesome. The alignment with experience, the importance of keeping an eye on the business side, it all really resonates with us. So Sheri, thank you again. I enjoyed this a lot.
I really appreciate it. Thank you, everyone. I know you guys are really busy and you took time out of your day to hang with me. And Jon, thank you for inviting me. I really appreciate it, because this is something, obviously, you guys can see that I'm really passionate about. And anytime I have an opportunity to share about running retreats, I always get really excited. So thank you for making it possible for me to share what I love.
Y'all want to unmute and you can say thank you, hello, goodbye, anything you'd like for Sheri? Go for it.